David here. I'm just doing the London recap for this morning. So, no trades for myself on AU or AU. I placed an order on AU, but it wasn't tagged on a sell, which I'll show you. But yeah, let's start with the daily in AU. So, we know we had the bearish break of structure here. So, we're currently in the pullback phase. Obviously, we know that in the majority of cases with a daily pullback, it pulls back to at least the EQ of the leg, which obviously lines up nicely with this little supply range here. So it's very possible we could crack back and mitigate this and then tank, but then you can see just how corrective this pullback is. It would not surprise me if we tank from here without mitigating this here. But essentially in the daily, no massive bias. Happy to play longs towards here or shorts to potentially target the big low depending on what's setting up on the lower time frames. So trying to stay neutral based in the daily. On the 4 hour, obviously 4 hours bearish, there's the swing high, there's the current swing low, so this is basically all the 4 hour pullback as well. The internal structure is currently bullish because that there is sort of the IBOS, giving us this demand range here, and then obviously we swapped liquidity into this POI on Friday with a huge momentum to the downside. So at that point I was sort of thinking it's pretty likely the pullback was over and we were going to run this low, but then sort of the refined wick at the extreme of the range held and we got a pretty decent bullish reaction from that. So at this point 4 hour internal is still bullish, and obviously we know price can mitigate the EQ of the daily and 4 hour leg. So I was happy to take sells, obviously, or happy to take buys, sorry. Obviously we're in this supply here that caused the bearish chalk. Now obviously fractal structure is, I place a lot less weight on it than I do on internal structure, so the fact that this here sort of held, I knew it was very possible that the bearish chalk was only to facilitate the mitigation of this and that basically price is going to continue higher. But yeah, for this reason I was happy enough to keep buying into this supply, as the supply only caused the chalk and I knew that the internal was still bullish. But obviously I wasn't completely discounting sales either, because given that sweep liquidity, the mitigation is here, and then the huge bearish momentum, it wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility either if we were to tank from here. And you can see we have all this sort of liquidity beneath these lows as well to target. So sort of again in the 4 hour, happy to take sells, happy to take buys, just sort of not being welded to my bias and not really trying to force on, and just sort of waiting for clear signs in either direction on the M15. And then on the M15, so this morning coming into session, let's use bar replay just to go back to, this is just before London here. So coming into London, this was my protected internal low because it caused this IBOS. So I was expecting this to hold. I knew we had this sort of M10 supply up here that price may want to mitigate, and this was the weak internal high at the moment. It's strong now, but I'll just change it. So yeah, I knew as this high was weak, this high was strong on the M15 but weak on the 4 hour, so I knew it was possible that the M15 might switch bullish and run this high sort of to facilitate the continuation of the 4 hour bullish internal pullback towards the EQ of the leg. So for that reason I was sort of happy enough to look for sells, even though we were in the 4 hour supply, we were in the premium of the M15 leg and the M15 was bearish. So the main POI that I had my eye on coming into London was this one here. It was sort of the clearest. This was a bullish II boss. You can see we respected the demand at the extreme of the range here, had a V-shaped recovery up, and then we were sort of pausing in this little supply range. So price sort of ranged through the night, and then eventually we got the bullish II boss, and basically it's a flip as well. And then if you, as obviously this is where that is the failed reaction to this supply. So obviously where the momentum came in to basically cause the II boss and the flip was from this supply, or this demand, sorry. So I had my alert set in it and was happy enough to look for buys in it to target the weak internal high, while understanding that there was the possibility that we could run the M15 high because the high was weak in the 4 hour. You can see we got a bearish chalk here as well, sorry, just before the session. So if you wanted to be aggressive, it is valid to look for a sell from there. You can see that's the chalk, just the inside bar, so then you can look for prices, pull back in there and then look for sells. Personally, I sort of had a pretty strong bullish bias following this II boss. So we had sort of the larger internal structure was bullish, the smaller internal structure was bullish. So I knew there was a pretty good chance the price could just mitigate something in that range and continue higher. So I wasn't really too keen on sells. But then obviously the M15 is bearish overall. So in anticipation of catching the next bearish M15 leg, you can sort of look for a chalk there. It is valid. There was a couple of potential entries there that it will go through on the M1, potentially pull back into it and come into the M15 demand. My alert went off then. I'll show you. There was no entry in the M1 for me within that. Again, I'll show you that in the M1 in a second. And then see, got the bearish II boss. So now the small internal was bearish, but the larger internal was still bullish. So at this point, you could have looked for price to pull back in here and then look for a sell. And personally, the larger internal was still bullish, so I was sort of still pretty hesitant to look for sells at this point, but it was valid. Could have looked for buys from this demand at this point, but you can see there's pretty decent momentum to the downside there. And then like literally quadruple bottoms behind that there, so when price comes down here, not really any inducement in the leg either, just sort of wide open space at this point, so there was plenty of reason to be cautious there, and it didn't really sweep liquidity either. You could argue behind that inside bar, but it's not really that significant, so there's reason to be cautious here, particularly as we're bearish overall. So let's play it on. You can see we eventually pulled back into this flip zone that led to the II boss, and then got the reaction, and then we tanked, and eventually got the close below. So now the swing and internal are both aligned, so coming in New York, that's the obvious POI there, to basically be looking for a price to pull back into, and then to potentially look to target the week low now that everything's aligned again. So that's the M15, and then I'll just show you some of the potential entries in the M1 here. So this was the M15 supply that caused the bearish chalk just before Frankfurt open. You can see we pulled back into it here, had the little chalk there, but this is where there's not that much of a liquidation. Yes, you could count that there as a liquidation, but that high didn't achieve on it. It just sort of moved sideways, so it's questionable whether there's going to be that much liquidity behind that. Whereas you can see then we got the chalk, which means that there is a pretty significant high. You'll have people trying to get in short here, and then price just comes back up and stops them out. That's the sort of liquidation you want to see, because this high actually achieved something by causing the chalk here. So at this point, you could have looked for a sell there. I would have much preferred that entry model if you wanted to be aggressive from the M15 chalk, but it wouldn't be mitigated on it. Then we come into the M15 POI demand that I sort of favoured for a buy. See here, had a little liquidation there again. Low didn't really achieve on it. It was just basically to pull back into that supply. So then again, we had another little sweep there, which again, this low didn't really achieve on it, and just pulled back up, and then got the bullish chalk just there at the red line. So then yeah, it's valid tender there because you have the M1 chalk, which is sort of the one absolute ingredient you need in an entry model. But again, just as happened up here, basically the chalk, the first chalk was just to basically generate the proper liquidity, because you'll have people trying to get into the market prematurely from this demand, and then they get stopped out, and that's your proper liquidation. And then you can see we sort of pushed up here, reasonably V-shaped. You can see clearly, just reading the M1 price action, that the ranges were being respected in the M1. So at this point, I was just waiting for the chalk, which was here, and it was looking as though we were going to get a nice clean flip there. We even swept liquidity behind there, and then just basically looking for price to shoot up and then pull back into the flip, and then maybe play longs, but we never got the chalk, and then price essentially just tanked. Then there's no news or anything that I could see that caused this move, but obviously something must have happened somewhere to cause such a sharp drop. Then this was like the little M15 flip zone that was respected. Again, you could have been aggressive. You could say there was those sort of equal highs liquidated there, but that's the chalk, and then there's no tag in the extreme on it, and yeah, that was pretty much it. There were the only sort of opportunities on the one that I could see in EU. So yeah, no trades for me. Sort of watching closely here, but obviously didn't get the chalk. And then here, just on account of the internal still being bullish, I didn't really fancy just trading following the M15 chalk, as it could have just been to mitigate. The M15 chalk may have just been to facilitate the mitigation of this range, so it could have easily just shot up and you could have taken a quick loss there. But obviously coming in New York, swinging internals aligned, says your strong internal high now. And this is sort of the whole supply range. So yeah, we sort of have this one here as well, sort of at the more extreme. But yeah, that's sort of the obvious one. That's where the momentum came in to cause the bearish high boss, so that will be the one I will have my eye on. I have the alert and all set there, so hopefully it will pull back in there during New York and then potentially target the week low here, and now that everything's aligned again. But that is EU. AU again, the daily's been getting pretty messy, just ignoring the internal bearish pull back into supply in the premium, so you're sort of expecting that there overall. Obviously the larger internal is bullish because we had this IBOS, so this whole demand range, but then we have this sort of range within a range, so IBOS, if you will, that basically price closed below and then we've pulled back into supply, so it's possible we could just time from here. So yeah, overall massively favour sells, just on account of the smaller internal and the swing both being bearish. On the 4 hour it's pretty clear, to be honest. This is obviously swing, this is the swing low, this is the swing high, this was the most recent break of structure, this was the most recent IBOS, so internal is bearish as well. So yeah, everyone's lined up bearish, which sort of fits nicely with the daily being bearish as well. It's a good sign, a good chance that the bearish trend could sustain in the 4 hour and take out the week daily low. We pulled back following the boss and IBOS, we pulled back into this supply, didn't quite hit the refined pivot, but we did mitigate the range, and then we pushed down with a lot of momentum, had a bearish chalk as well. So coming into London this morning, massively favoured sells, just because it's very possible that basically this pullback is complete now that we've mitigated this supply at the protected internal high. So I knew there was a very good chance that we were going to run this low, so massively favoured sells. And the M15 then, obviously the internal is bearish. This is the sort of most recent supply range. That's sort of the most significant recent IBOS. Personally, I did not count this as an IBOS, just because compared to like sort of the most recent internal ranges, it felt quite insignificant. So one thing you can do to sort of decide whether you want to count like a smaller range as a internal structure is like you can jump up to the 1 hour, and in the 1 hour you can see quite clearly that yeah, that's your sort of 1 hour IBOS, and that there was just a chalk on the 1 hour. So you could have counted this as like it's a significant enough pullback. You could have counted this as like IBOS or whatever, but I was just happy enough to call it a chalk, to be honest, as I knew there was a good chance that we had just taken out this high to basically mitigate something within the supply range. So this morning, just use bar replay. Coming into the session, we'd had sort of the bullish chalk. I knew that basically that these like little demand ranges might be respected just to pull back up to maybe into this supply, but wasn't massively keen on buying from this leg, as this low was weak, as it only caused an M15 chalk. You know, it didn't cause an IBOS or a swing boss. So whereas this high was sort of protected, as it caused this IBOS, and obviously this high was strong as it caused this break of structure here. So I very rarely trade from weak legs, and I was pretty much just happy enough to wait to see if we got to sell from here. But you can see the little demand range was the little demand that caused the chalk was respected there. We pulled back into it and pushed up. There was no entry. So yeah, at this point I was pretty much waiting for this supply to be hit or for something to change, basically for an M15 shock or a flip or something to basically suggest that the immediate order flow sort of shifted bearish in line in the swing and internal. See there, we pull into the demand, so obviously you'd expect this demand to basically push price higher, but you can see we just range around for a bit and then get the M15 shock, get the flip. So had these little sell to buy wicks drawn on, set an alert here, and then price pull back into it. There was an entry that I placed. You can see pull back into the supply, no massively clear liquidation, but it's pretty clear to me what was going on, that basically we'd had the flip and shock and that there was a very good chance that basically price is going to continue bearish. So I was pretty much just happy enough to be aggressive with the entry here, as it's pretty clear to me in the moment. You can see we also had the element of a flip within it as well, where we reacted to the inside bar, pushed up, but didn't take out the high and then pushed bearish. So you have your mitigation, your flip, your chalk, and then your V-shape where sort of the momentum comes in. So placed my entry there, but it wasn't tagged, unfortunately. So I'll just jump back out to M15. At this point then I had this supply drawn on, but price didn't mitigate it. It only mitigated the range, and personally I don't really trade. I don't like trading ranges. I usually just take the pivot, because obviously you will miss trades like this here, but obviously in a lot of cases it's going to save you from premature losses as well. Yeah, so there we are, tanked, didn't quite hit the pivot, so no entry there. At this point you can see the clear bearish momentum, like it's obvious sort of something's changed, so I was very reluctant to trade from these demand zones, as obviously this low is weak. The M15 shock was probably just to facilitate the mitigation of something up here, and then it was very likely we're going to roll over to the downside from here. So ideally wanted to see an M15 shock from, at least an M15 shock from one of these demand zones before looking to get long, as it's just a weak leg. Like if you're struggling for consistency, just stick to trading from the either protected internal or strong swing legs, and it'll save you so much trouble. When you've got the weak leg like this, it's just not really worth trying to force on, and then you can see you pretty much just smash down through them. Yeah, so at this point coming in New York, it's very likely that all this is going to be liquidated and we will get another M15 break structure. So yeah, you can just look for price to basically pull back into. There's no massively clear POIs there. I'll share a markup on it before session anyway, sort of go through the clearer POIs, sort of the ones I'm trading from, because obviously at this point it's very likely it's going to be run, so you just want to sort of try and get involved in the order flow until you basically get the low run. So yeah, swing and internal both bearish at this point, so we've had the bearish M15 shocks well, so Evans bearish, and yeah, sells are definitely the path of least resistance coming in New York. So that is it, guys. One no tag in EU, no trades in EU. Obviously one last session in August. It's a month I'll be pretty glad to see the back of, to be honest. It's been a pretty quiet month. I think it's probably the quietest month I've had since I started trading this strategy, maybe with the exception of March, whenever the Ukraine conflict kicked in. But look, it is what it is. July was a very good month, so if every month can't be good, so it's important just to sort of take the rough with the smooth and not get disheartened, and don't start chasing the market. Don't start thinking the strategy doesn't work. You just have to take the rough with the smooth. You know, if you're struggling, other people are struggling, that means other people's going to quit, which is obviously if you can stick with it, that obviously gives you a massive advantage. But yeah, that's it. So that's it, guys. Hopefully September will be a better month, but thanks for listening, and if you have any questions, just tag me in the Discord. Thanks, guys.